smooth, really smooth coffee there. What's going on, you guys? It's your host with the most, ShinKensou. You already know who it is. If you're on my channel, you should already know it's me, right? I should get another tagline to open up with too, I'm sure. Of course, I released my thoughts about Chip on Strive in the most recent beta. So now I want to take some time out to talk with you guys about how I feel about Strive and its overall direction, what this beta brought, and what I think is coming for the future. But before I do that, you know I gotta do it every time for the one time in the video. For those of you who've been watching the videos, some of you guys are actually not subscribed. You know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell, stay up to date with anything and everything going on this channel. Now, with all the YouTube housekeeping things out of the way, let's just get right into it. And let's see what your boy actually really thinks about this game. Guilty Gear Strive, open beta 2, beta 3, technically speaking. How do we feel about it now? Well, I want to put this out here. I actually did kind of go over this on my stream, but I felt like it was a little too long. So I wanted to make a more condensed version of like everything I was saying on stream. So I did a pretty cool community talk with everyone and see how other people were feeling and whatnot. But this is a condensed version. So I think I want to knock this out the way because I think this is like the one thing just about everyone can agree on. And I'm gonna be blunt here, like I am so fucking tired of talking about the lobbies. They work. We're stuck with freaking, you know, miniature Minecraft stick figures, swing your, you know, broom and blah blah blah, whatever. You can run, slide, jump, shoot, whatever. You can play Mega Man, do whatever the hell you want. You can Mario jump, whatever. At this point in the game, they've already proven that they want to keep it this way. I, at this stage, have no problem with it anymore. My problem with it was in the beginning. Now I have no problems with it. There are some small quality of life changes that have come to it, like getting rid of the news section on the far right. That's cool, whatever. They added, you know, stations in which you can play. That's cool. I'm fine with that too. I know that there were some disconnection errors and stuff like that, just like the previous betas. Obviously that was annoying, but let's be serious here. They're most likely gonna fix that. It's not gonna happen on release, probably not. I don't know. I can't say it will, I can't say it won't, but there's gonna be connectivity issues regardless how you look at it. You know, they're getting a lot of flack for like a lot of the connectivity issues when like that stuff's been happening in all kinds of games that have online for years. And people have been complaining about it for years. So it is a never-ending cycle. No matter what game you play online, there will be connectivity issues and all that good stuff. The addition to like rematch mode in the beta was nice. You know, it's amazing how people feel like they weren't gonna make this an actual thing in the full release game, yet they've made rematch in every single Arc Sys game that they've freaking released. It's almost amazing people think that rematch wouldn't have been there in the first place, which is kind of wild. I do think that the tower system is still fine. You know, all that was fine. There were more connectivity issues in the towers than there were like in the parks, which is kind of interesting. However, it did suck, like I said before, to be in training mode and it just randomly kick you out. And yeah, that was bad, but I feel like that can be remedied on full release, and if it doesn't get remedied, they'll fix it over time, you know. And as you can see, I'm very partial to it. I'm kind of like blasé when it comes to that stuff because it's just kind of like you know, the core meat and potatoes is playing against people, not worrying too much if I'm gonna get kicked out. Granted, it sucks, but you know, you could always like play training mode before you go into a match, you know, offline. So it's kind of whatever. But it's cool that we have that functionality to be able to play training mode and wait for matches. That's good. That's what should happen. That's what every fighting game should let you do. Anyway, so now that I've deaded that, I literally have to do that part because I really don't like talking about the lobby system. It's kind of like moot to me. I really just don't give a shit. I won't lie to you. As long as the functionality of the game works when I'm playing my opponent, it's fine, right? So lobbies out of the way, done deal, whatever. I wanted to dead that first. Now the gameplay in itself has gotten better. The online connectivity does seem better, but it did have some moments of being a little shaky here and there. And that kind of sort of comes with them making it a guaranteed fixed 1 frame delay on the rollback. So I do think that they should open that up and let us kind of do that on our own so that we can kind of make our matches smoother instead of kind of having this fixed thing. It's understandable. They want to make things easier for us, so it's fine. Like I do understand it, but I think that can be remedied on like the PC version, since you can actually go in and edit those files to kind of like fix that. But I mean, that kind of sucks because you'd have to do it for every match that you kind of want to play. So you have to go out of the game, do that, and blah blah blah, when they could just let it be in the game just like +R. I think that's kind of an easy fix. I don't think that that's too difficult of a thing to add to the game. Like, people are doing it in +R, and I think if they kind of did a better job of explaining that portion, like, that wouldn't be too bad. So as of the online, it still feels great. I still sat in the Japanese lobbies and still did my thing. Nothing was too different in that regard. The experience still felt the same. Had a lot of good connections across the board in that, which was pretty interesting when you think about it. Again, still playing from Texas to Japan, so it's pretty cool. There's not too much to say about that portion of online. Like, when it works, it works. You know, the rematch feature is phenomenal. It's really fast to get back into a match, which is great, you know, and I think that's a really, really cool way to go about it. Like, being able to just rematch and I'm back in there, good. Like that's snappy. That's good. You know, that, and that's me even playing on PS4, you know, like, so that's great. That's great. Other than that, like, I had no problems with that. Like, that part of the game was still was pretty much the same. So the rollback is still solid, more or less. Now, before I get to talking about characters and gameplay, I do want to point out one major feature that I think is really, really, really good. It just needs one quality of life change, and that is the replay theater. The replay theater is actually amazing. Like, I would argue that it's even better than CFN. And I think it's great that it's the way it is, because it's a gigantic compendium for them to actually check out what's happening in the game, see how characters are performing, see who's underperforming, etc., etc. You know, it's neat to the point to where you can search by your character, you know, the matchup, who's, you know, which character you want to see win. Like, all that stuff's really cool, and you can follow the, you know, the player, etc., etc. Like, it's really well done. The only thing that thing is missing is a rewind button, and I can't understand why they can't do that, but maybe on full release they will. Doubting it because of where the game's at right now. I think the replay theater is the replay theater, no matter how you look at it. But it's a really good feature in the game that I think that people should really go mess with, because I messed with it for a little bit on a recommendation of my boy Raph, and I was like, whoa, they really, really up the quality of the replay theater. So it's really cool to see that that's a big buff to the game. Big buff to the game. Really good way to, like, get in there, see matches. You know, it's a great way to go about learning, you know, the game without having to go to YouTube, which is something that they did in Street Fighter V also, right? Like, you should be able to, and even other games that they've had, you know. But I feel like this is a really, really good version of that. You know, you should be able to just turn the game on, go look up matches of your favorite character and the matchup that might be giving you trouble, and you can go study. Really good way to get people to improve. Really good way to get people to improve. And yeah, I think that's a really good feature that's not really being talked about. There's a lot of harping on other things, but not looking at some of the good, right? So now I can get into gameplay, right? Let's talk about the characters, right? There was obviously some big changes in the system. You know, I did do a video on the system changes and what I thought was going to be like how it was going to be. And a lot of that was pretty true from what I stated. And it's not really nearly as bad as people make it out to be, in terms of like the which we'll talk about now, is the the extra added recovery to the mobility options, right? So your double jumps and your air dashes, right? Those things weren't nearly as bad, but when people understand how they work, these nerfs to movement is more of a nerf to the speedster characters than they are to a good chunk of the roster, you know. And even then, it's kind of like a good change in my honest opinion, based on how people were jumping around so much in previous betas that like they had to do something in terms of nerfing like general mobility. I don't really have a problem with it. I'll tell you guys with a straight face that like I'm okay if they went back to air unblockables or they kept it this way. And I'll push into the philosophy behind it and why I think it's good right now. But I will say one thing about air mobility. The biggest thing I did not like is the air backdash movement. I think it was really bad. I think that they could have honestly either revert that change to go back to the previous version, or just make it on a per character basis how far that they go back. Like Slayer always used to have like the shortest air dash back, you know, like that's fine. If it should be character specific, you know, how far that they go. I think forward air dash mobility was totally fine. I think that one was a bit of an overstatement for a lot of people. And for what it's worth, what people weren't paying attention to is that it made certain characters have more consistent things with their air dash in terms of like jump ins. So for example, with Chip, obviously because I play Chip, you know, jump in does counter hit, air dash, you know, button, and you can continue your combo barring how deep the jump dust was. Otherwise, the air dash, you know, will cross them over and like you'll whiff your whole attack completely. It was like that in the last beta and the beta before that too. So the delay based beta and open beta 1, if you will, the air dashes were so far, it made it very difficult to actually kind of convert off of, or, you know, even get like a 2-hit combo. Like, you know, you hit like a jump in, you air dash, hit with the other button, you don't really get another combo, but you get a good position. Like, that's kind of how it is even now. But before, like, you would completely overshoot. And so I feel like they tried to adjust the air dashes so that they wouldn't overshoot. Now, I will say that the jump arcs in general, I think are a little, it's hard to say whether it's good or bad, you know. I do think that they could add a little bit more forward inertia to them, but I feel like they might have done it this way because, again, jumps might have been overshooting, they might have been overperforming because jumping was so good previously. So they tried to make it so that, you know, it made it easier to like 6P things or forward punch things or anti-air in general. So the jumps were a little bit more, they were adjusted to kind of accommodate that. Because what's not being talked about is the dash into jump momentum is still there, and it's really great. Like, it's really great. So I kind of see the direction they were going with that. Again, another thing that I think is a slight thing that they could have readjusted is just add a little bit more forward inertia just to make jump ins a little bit better. Not that they weren't already good and people were not already still air dashing like nutcases, because and I say that very loosely, a lot of people were still air dashing and still approaching that way, and it didn't really, like, it doesn't really hurt the general approach, you know. So, you know, I think that's okay. But yeah, those are two minor things I felt. Air backdash could have been better, and forward jumps could have been a little bit better. But other than that, like, regarding the double jump and the air dash landing recovery, like, it's actually teaching players newer skills, right? Because when you think about it from a general standpoint, right, newer players and even longtime players or intermediate players don't really jump in faultless defense. Like, they acknowledge, like, intermediate players acknowledge that there are still air unblockables, but they don't always jump in FD, right? They don't always jump and use faultless defense to protect themselves away from that, right? Even in older Guilty Gears, right? And newer players definitely don't know about it because they don't think to do it, because they're just trying to jump in. They're just trying to jump at their opponent and maybe try to bait something, you know. As they're gradually improving, they think to themselves, if I jump in, I can block this, right? But in older Guilty Gears, there were a lot of air unblockable attacks, so that wasn't really the case. So in lieu of that, they decided to make it where, you know, if you jump in and you block, you know, you do get to aerial guard, that's fine, but, you know, you have extra added, you know, landing recovery, and now it is your opponent's turn to push their offense, because in the older games, you do the exact same thing if you FD. So it's just a different way of punishing, if you will, and taking your turn back. This time it's a little bit more defined, because if you jumped and you air blocked something with FD, say you jumped and blocked maybe, I don't know, an aerial fireball from Kai or something like that, or ground fireball from Kai, you know, there's still going to be added plus frames to the Kai player to, you know, push their advantage. You know, there are things in which that are blocked in the air that still push their advantage. You know, you're still having to deal with extra landing recovery, even if it's not like as long as this game. It's still there. It's not as bad as far as I'm concerned on either front. I think it's okay if it's one or the other, but I think this current way of dealing with the air block situation is okay because it's a general standpoint, which is a big thing about Strive, right? From a general standpoint, they want players to play a fighting game from a general standpoint without having to worry about the system mechanics too much. And moving into that, you know, dealing with the double jumps and the landing recovery, it's now teaching players, hey, if they double jump, now I have access to more options to defend myself and punish them for trying to overcommit on their aerial options. And again, like I said before, it does hurt some of the speedster characters. It does hurt the ability to bait, you know, anti-airs, right? But it's a part of the game now. And baiting anti-airs is still there. People still have options around it. You still have, like, when you consider the RC system and blue RC in general, like together in conjunction, right? All of that is still there. It's still prominent. It's still an option. It's still something that can scare your opponent that's on the ground to make you think about that situation. You know, so there are ways to save yourself. Now, granted, even if you jump, double jump or air dash and you FD when you land, there's still recovery frames. So you can't cancel the recovery frames on landing with faultless defense. In some ways that's good, in some ways it's bad, but again, it's a way to teach people to punish mobility, because punishing mobility in the older games, it can be a bit of a task, you know, like it can be difficult, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just how newer people will be able to digest dealing with those situations. Might be difficult. It might take a lot longer to learn how to deal with those situations and how to use their options to stop those situations. So I think it's actually okay that there's a clear-cut way to punish people for overcommitting or over-abusing mobility. You see what I'm saying? But on the ground, it's actually okay. So now we talked about the air, and let's talk about the ground. They added dash blocking. So two things they added was just general air blocking and dash blocking. Before, you had the FD stop your running animation, right? When you run, your character has a slide animation or a stop animation, or the end of the run cycle, if you will, right? And in the older Guilty Gears, you would actually get hit, right? Now they added dash blocking, and that's not necessarily bad. I think it's actually okay because a lot of newer players, they want to run at their opponent. And when they run and they hold back, they get, you know, distorted because they're like, why am I getting hit? I'm holding block. Well, it's because you chose not to use your faultless defense to block, right? On one front, when people could say that, well, you know, that's kind of too easy, blah, blah, blah. But like, there's a degree of, you know, barrier entry that you kind of have to have there. Now, you still gain the same kind of control if you learn to faultless defense stop your run. You still get the greater sense of punishing and having more control over your run. They're just attacking it from a general standpoint of, if you use these things from a general standpoint, you'll be okay. You just have to want to learn to take it to the next step to utilize the other older strategies of Guilty Gear to punish your opponent. See? Coffee. So again, when you look at this, when you think about the aerial punishment options, just to come back to it really briefly, you know, your air throws are prominent, your forward punch is prominent. Now you get to practice punishing landing recoveries. Like, it's a buff to a lot of characters. Even the speedsters, even though it hurts, you know, Chip and Milia to some degree, like, it's actually fine because they can do it too. The thing about this is pretty much every character can do it too, barring the situation when it presents itself. So it's just I think it's a bit more of a convenient way to deal with air mobility, because there has to be a give and take. And I think they're just trying to reinvent that, you know? And I don't think there's anything wrong, because it opens up your air throw. It opens up the air to airs a bit more. No one's even considered, like, you know, when you catch your air to air, that you can air dash on them. And, you know, and I mentioned this before, and I show people this stuff on my stream. So, and I'll most likely edit this part in, but like, Milia can do jump kick, air to air, and falling H. And it is an uncontestable situation. At that point, she got 2 aerial normals, right? One could have led to a combo, and now the other one leads into pressure, right? Falling H, and now you have to guess if she's gonna air dash on you, or fall down and do like a string, or air dash on you twice, air dash jump H, air dash jump H, and then you have to get, that's like 3 overheads, you know? Every character in the game, for the most part, has access to this same concept, right? With Chip, jump kick, air to air, or then I'll do, you know, jump kick, air to air, right? And then falling slash or falling dust, and then you can air dash off of that and continue, you know, another mix up, another situation to keep and maintain pressure. Sure, it's guessing, but the jump kick and the falling H are actually pretty much guaranteed because of the extra landing recovery. So you get a new mix-up situation, so it encourages you to maybe try to catch them air to air, or to punish their double jump mobility in that fashion, other than air throwing and typical forward punch, or your other non-situational, or your you know, you get forward punch, you get air throw, and your situational anti-airs to like kind of push that agenda during that situation, on top of adding the ability to punish the landing recovery. You see what I'm saying? And punishing the landing recovery is going to be a little bit harder than most of the other options. So you get a multitude of things in which that you can pick and choose and do, because that's kind of how old Guilty Gear was too, right? If you get caught in the air, they could just staircase you down. When I say staircase, you can just do a string of attacks that just, if they jump and they meet you air to air, you'll eventually just string them down to the ground, right? It's a lot of the same concept. It's just a little bit, it'll be a little bit difficult for people to kind of grasp off rip, but it's there. You know, there's also the ability to air instant block those attacks and maybe reverse the situation. I need to do a little bit more testing with that, but on full release. There's going to be a lot to cover here, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, this might be a little long, but I definitely want to try to provide more insight from a deeper standpoint, and try to keep this as condensed as I can, right? And in lieu of you guys' time. So that's like air mobility and stuff like that, and ground mobility, and how these smaller concepts were added into the game, right? There are other things within the gameplay that I'm actually pretty happy with. I do think that the game's balance got better with this patch, or this build, if you will. Definitely, I can say like the quality of life changes to a lot of the cast members, I think, were good, more or less. And not just Chip, but, you know, a lot of other characters I feel got tweaked in the right ways, you know, to the point to where I feel like it's mostly on the right track of being balanced. And, you know, balanced in the sense that, you know, everyone has something. Some characters are a little bit tougher than others. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's not. The introduction also of Anji and Ino was really good. I think Ino was probably the better of the two right now. She has probably the most consistent, you know, knockdown setups in the game. Blah blah sweep note, and it does work against like everything in the game. What a lot of people may not know is that literally Ino in this game is the exact way that she came into Guilty Gear XX as a new character. From like, the kit is the exact same with the exception of how the supers work. She had the exact same move count. Nothing was different outside of now the dives give her the bounce and her supers are different. So, and obviously the way the kit works and interacts in this game is very one-to-one. Like, I feel like Ino probably had some of the best transitions from one-to-one outside of maybe like Leo. Leo transferred really well with newer options. All things considered, all I feel that they could do for Ino now is pretty much just make her hover dash just faster, and I think that's about it. Like, I feel like she's pretty much where she needs to be, and that's part of the reason why I didn't make a video on her kit, because there was almost nothing to talk about. I'm like, wow, this is pretty one-to-one. And when I played her in training mode myself and saw stuff, I was like, yep, there really wasn't much to talk about here. Like, she really truly is one-to-one, you know? So I think that's the only quality of life change I could see that would make her like perfect is just to speed up the hover dash, and that's it. Everything else about her I think is like just fine. I didn't see anything that suggested that she needed too much work outside of her mobility, and the dash button is just like phenomenal for that character. So yeah. As for Anji, I feel like Anji, he needs a little something extra to kind of push like his kit. Like a lot of people kind of think he's like complete crap, and I'm like, I don't really see him being totally awful whatsoever when like his buttons are super good. Some people would argue that his buttons are slow, but that's kind of a thing across the board with Strive. I think like frame data was adjusted across the board for a lot of characters coming in from old Guilty Gear into this game. I think the major things Anji could use, I think Far Slash into Fujin should be a consistent combo. It seemed like it hit mostly on crouch or tip range. Like it's kind of like a weird one, but you know, I feel like it's just his longer range confirm doesn't feel as strong as maybe it could be. He's got a lot of good things going for him. I just think they just need to do some small quality of life changes. I don't want to get too deep on the character because I could harp on him forever, but I think he's in, from a general standpoint, they have a pretty decent foundation. They could just fix things like, you know, the guard point should be able to attack a little bit. He should be able to attack a bit faster out of the guard point. You know, I feel like that's something that they should take a look at, you know, just to make it so that, you know, while that's good that there's counterplay to his guard pointing, and there should be counterplay to it, but I think he should be able to attack a little bit faster, because I think there's a decent mind game there that they could just readjust. But I want to make this about all the characters, but I can definitely say for certain that like so many characters, in my honest opinion, got some pretty good quality of life changes. There are some characters that could have been a little bit more improved, or like maybe quote unquote not nerfed, if you will. But I feel like, you know, certain characters who got their changes, I think some of the issue is like there are other characters coming into the game that may not be able to deal with those things, and they're trying to preemptively strike that. I know it does suck to get used to things in this beta and then be like, why is it gone? You know, well, keep in mind it's a beta. Like not everything's gonna stay. You know, things are always subject to change. It's an early access build of the game that they let us try out to see what's what, and they got sufficient data to go back and readjust things. I mean, had the game came out with Giovanna and Soul having infinites, I think people would just completely clown Guilty Gear, you know? So it's a good thing that they took the time out to go back and look at things. And I know it also sucks at the same time to like learn all this stuff and then lose it and be upset. But I feel like we have to acknowledge that it is a beta. I think that's the biggest thing that kind of like gets me, is like people forget that it's a beta. Things are always subject to change, and like that's just gonna happen. You know, I don't think there's a single beta in existence that I've ever played where everything from beta transferred over to full release, and if it did, it most likely got patched out eventually. You know, that's why these things exist, so they can get the data to kind of readjust and reevaluate things. I do think there are other parts of the game in terms of gameplay that like are kind of really cool, and other characters should have access to it. And I feel like I think this is very safe to say that like Soul was probably like the outright most, you know, ridiculous character in the game. Like he was playing Strive the best in my honest opinion. And I think I should definitely talk about him because that character definitely needs to be brought back down to earth. That character can keep all the cool swag stuff. Just let more characters swag out like him, you know? Like he's got some really neat stuff. And I think there are some things about him that obviously need to get readjusted. And I think if they readjust those things, then, you know, it'd be fine. You know, because right now, obviously, everyone's complaining about Far Slash and his forward slash. Those two buttons are definitely messed up. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're not. But the issue is, like, it's like +2 for the Far Slash, and it moves him forward too far. If they made it -1 or neutral, that would change a lot of things, because he's one of the only other characters that can stagger, like, that far out and still get, like, a reward. I think if more characters had the ability to stagger like that, with just one button that far away, that would help a little bit more. But I feel like it makes his pressure too generic. It's, you know, if you're playing solo in this beta, it's like you were balling, you were having fun. That's what you see. You got the new piece and chain, you know, Riot, you know, or big balling. You know, it's like he was definitely big balling with all that stuff. So I feel like if they scale back on that, like it'll be okay with him. Because I feel like across the board, he's been the most consistent character across all the betas. Like he's gotten, even though they readjusted, you know, the infinite, they've changed certain properties about his moves throughout all the builds. Like he's definitely come along all the way up until now in this, you know, last beta, and he's never really gotten nerfed. Like they made Heavy Mob Cemetery have armor and it's a command grab. Like, I don't know, and not to get too harpy on like the tier list or anything like that, but that guy's definitely showing, you know, hey, I'm about to be one of the best, if not the best in the game. Like Heavy Mob Cemetery going all the way across the screen with armor, oh man. And it's a really fast super, so things on block are gonna get, you know, blown up. And I think like a decent way to make Heavy Mob Cemetery stay that way is just let it cost 100 bar. Like, if you want to have a super that's just going to decimate the opponent, just let it cost 100 bar at that point. At that stage in the game, it's more acceptable for what it's more acceptable for what it's capable of providing for the player, right? It can keep the same damage, but having full screen armor dashing command grab for 50 bar? That's so easy to get? Nah, at least make it cost 100. Or if you want to keep it that, or if you know, a decent nerf to it is just don't let it have armor, let it be a hit grab. You know, don't let it go full screen. You know, because you have to think about, right, from a balance standpoint, how Heavy Mob Cemetery just completely changes a matchup. It's like in Street Fighter 4, right? Abel versus Blanca is like bad for Abel until Abel gets Ultra 1, and it's like, well, Blanca can't play the game anymore because his Ultra is fully stocked up, and now like every other option Blanca does for his combos, like I believe on block, no, I know on block he would get Ultra 1, but I think even on hit in some cases he would still get Ultra 1 as a punish anyway. So like your basic bread and butter is punished by full Ultra, you know, that's kind of huge when you really think about it. And all it took was for Abel to get, you know, half an Ultra 1, and the matchup dynamic is completely changed. And this is a lot of the same with Soul here. So like they have to pull that back. Or if they want it, like I said before, if you want to keep it the same, 100 bar. If you want to, like, you know, adjust it, you know, do something. Do something. Just do something. Just not what it is, you know? So, but yeah, at the end of the day, like, I feel like a lot of the characters are like in a decent spot. You know, like I said, some quality of life things could be changed. Maybe they might do that in the day one patch, but like overall, I think the balance was okay. Like, I'll save my talk about characters for like another, like a pure on character video though. But I don't know, I feel like overall the balance was okay. This was something that was brought to my attention, so I think I might give this a bit of a burn. But newer players, you know, I do feel like this game is good for, you know, newer players and veteran players. I do think that they've struck a balance, and I think that this is the hardest thing to do, is to strike a good balance between, you know, difficult or like, you know, I feel like it should be, you know, easy to pick up, hard to master. I feel like that's a great philosophy for design, like, because, you know, when you play something, you want to be able to, like, you know, shimmy your way in there and kind of and just play the game, you know, and enjoy yourself. And I feel like they did a decent job of like just letting people get in there and just kind of hit buttons and just learn, you know. I do think, you know, and one thing that was brought to my attention recently, you know, was like, you know, the tutorial mode didn't teach enough. And on one front, I don't, you know, I kind of present 2 points to that, right? Like, yes, it'd have been good for the tutorial mode to kind of give you more regarding the system a little bit more, right? But at the same time, they also have a YouTube channel in which you can go check out those basic actions and go learn those things, because the view count on that video is pretty high. Now, they should have it in game, and it does suck that, you know, at the very last beta, this kind of information isn't readily available. But I guess it's because they assume, you know, and I think it's not the best assumption, that people have already looked at this information, and if they haven't, they can always reference it online or go look up a content creator, you know. So it's kind of a catch-22. Like, it should have been in there, you know, but it's not. That would have been a decent way for like people to learn more about the game and the system from that tutorial. I think that was a great opportunity that was actually missed overall. But at the same time, it's not really missed because it's on YouTube. So it's kind of see where I'm coming from. It's there, but it's just not in the game, you know. And I can get into tutorials and in fighting games, you know, for a whole nother video. But for what it is, that's kind of how it was. And yeah, it definitely should have been there. I'm definitely not gonna act like I, you know, am not objective to them making their mistakes too, you know. But I do feel like they did a lot of good this time around, and there's a lot more consistent things that are happening in the game. You know, at the end of the day, I feel like the way the game was designed is to let players have more interactions and play it, you know, fighting games, if you will. You know, get back to like the core of like fighting game things. That's why things cost, you know, 50 meter, so forth and so forth. If there was a 25 meter option to cancel out your moves like Xrd, then it wouldn't be Strive at that point. It would just be another form of Xrd, and it kind of sort of already is in a sense with the way the slowdown is with RC. But like, you know, at the end of the day, like I think it's shaping up to be something good. I will always say that the first iteration of a fighting game is never the best one. I think once they get sufficient data on what's happening with the characters, what's happening with the game and the system, I feel like they'll adjust accordingly. I do think that the future is bright for it. I think it's just a matter of people sticking with it. I'll be the first to tell you, I am not here to make you stick to it. I'm not here to, you know, change your mind or anything like that. I'm giving you my opinions, how I feel about it. You know, at the end of the day, all I care about is people playing Guilty Gear. So, you know, there's a flavor of ice cream in the shop for everyone. You know, you can play Plus R, you can play Xrd, you know, you can play Strive. There's 3, you know, major Guilty Gear games that all encompass a portion of the series. So, you know, just pick one and enjoy yourself, right? But in this instance, we're talking about the most recent one, which is Strive, right? So I think the future's bright. It's going to be a very interesting first year, I feel, for the game. I know there are some people that think that they should delay the game more, and I just think at this stage they don't have, I feel like they're hard pressed to release that game now. I don't think that they can stall that any longer. If it turns into a cyberpunk situation for a fighting game, that game is just not going to go any further than what it is, unfortunately. I don't really see it doing well if they delay this game one more time. I think that's like the nail in the coffin at that stage. And the reason I say that is because it shows that the developer has no faith in the product. You know, I feel like they should release it at this stage, stay on schedule, take the heat, fix the game. I think that's the best case scenario than taking it back and waiting even longer. You know, if they wait even longer, that, like I said, that game is dead in the water. No questions asked. I just gotta be honest with you guys. There's no way that game's coming back. No way. I feel like I'm gonna stay optimistic about the game because I want to see it go somewhere. They have the potential to do something because they've done great things. They've readjusted the balance. They added things that people asked for, minus the lobby system, guys. I know what you're thinking. Don't do that, Kensu. They didn't fix the lobby. Okay, fine. I will never change it on that one. Even I don't like the lobby as much as I love Arxis. I don't like that. Even I still think that that's not the best way. It's something where they've even reinvented rollback. They've redid rollback, right? They made rollback into something even more great than what it already is. And some of these things, they're getting tossed to the wayside too hard because of hashtag not my Guilty Gear. So the only thing I'll say is try to stay positive and keep an open mind. Keep your reservations. If you feel some type of way, trust me, you're not wrong for feeling that way. You know, there's a lot of people who are fans of Guilty Gear and newer fans of Guilty Gear that just want to see this game do well. And, you know, the success of the game depends on what they do, and it depends on the community and how Arxis interacts with the community in terms of growth in terms of how, you know, adding more things for people, etc., etc. You know, the sky's the limit. We'll just see where it goes, you know. But this video is getting kind of long, so let me go ahead and end it here. These are pretty much my thoughts. I could go on and talk about more things, but I think this is just a general gist. Like, my overall impressions of the game are good. I think that there's great potential there. It's just we got to see where this goes post-release, and that's all there is to it. As I said before, play more Guilty Gear. There are, you know, flavors of Guilty Gear in the ice cream shop. Go get you some. Go get you some Reload. Go get you some Plus R. Go get you some Xrd. Go play some Asuka, Guilty Gear Petite. I don't care. Pick one. Dust Strikers, Judgment. I don't care. Play one and go enjoy yourself. All right. Take care, everyone. I'll catch you next video. Deuces, gooses.